Hi there everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melissa and I am with Sew Yours. Today we are doing a brand new sewing tutorial on my latest sewing pattern. Please meet the Iris shoulder bag. Here is the beautiful bag that we're sewing up today in the video. This is our milled grain faux leather in the color Buttercup. For the piping, I used our steel blue milled grain and I went with light gold hardware. For my lining, I went with our brand new liner text in the prints. This is our pattern play print. In the beginning of the year, I sat down to design a brand new sewing pattern. I knew that I wanted to do piping as well as quilting, and that is how the Iris was born. I chose the name Iris because the quilting on the front exterior reminded me of rainbows, and in Greek, the name Iris means rainbows. If you want to learn more about the Iris, the hardware that you're going to need, the fabric stabilizers that I recommend, please watch the introductory video that I have done. I'll put a link in the description box below. I learned a lot from designing the Iris shoulder bag because I had never done piping before. It took me about 3 or 4 bags before I mastered the art of piping and learned all of the ways not to do piping. So I've put all that together in the pattern so that you could be successful in doing piping for your very first bag. You don't have to do piping and you don't have to do quilting on the Iris shoulder bag. You can leave those features off, and this would be a really quick and simple sew, perfect for confident beginners. This beauty right here was made by Angie, one of our staff members. She selected our brand new floral embossed vinyl that we now have available on our website, and she paired it with our faux leather in the color black. And then she went with gunmetal hardware. Instead of doing the hidden connectors that are featured in this pattern, she went with our diamond strap anchors. I also like this pattern because it gives you a nice blank canvas to use a panel or feature a print of choice. For this one here, I used our Lily Mirage printed vinyl. Another one of our staff members, Sharon, made up this beauty. She used our Obsidian Glow printed vinyl, paired that with our caramel milled grain faux leather for the piping, and she also went with gunmetal hardware. For these two beauties right here, I went with our Savannah suede. So this one features our beige and our chocolate, while this one features our blush and our cranberry, and I paired that with rose gold hardware. This is the one that I made up in the sewing pattern. To learn more about the Iris shoulder bag, please check out that introductory video. Otherwise, we're going to jump right in and start making up this beautiful Iris shoulder bag. Let's go over everything that you need to make your Iris shoulder bag. I've got everything laid out right here. Let's first talk about woven interfacing. If you're using a faux leather or vinyl that has a subtle one-way stretch, consider using woven interfacing on the wrong side of the fabric, as that's going to take out that stretch and make it a little bit easier to work with. Likewise, if you've chosen any quilting cottons for either your exterior or your lining, you are going to need to put woven interfacing on that. I am skipping that because I'm using our milled grain faux leather in the color Buttercup. This does not really have much of a stretch. It's very, very subtle. I find that it's very easy to work with without any woven interfacing, so I did not put any on mine. And then for my lining, I have chosen our liner text, which does not require any woven interfacing. There is no stretch to this. It is also a little bit thicker than quilting cotton, resembling what quilting cotton would feel like with woven interfacing on it, so that's a great time saver. This is our new pattern play print, is what it's called. Let's begin with the exterior of the bag. If you have chosen to add piping to your bag, you will need 2 pieces of 3 32nds of an inch welt cord piping, which I have right here. You could also use cotton cording if you'd like. I find that this is the most easiest to work with. We have this now available on our website if you need any. We also are going to have hardware kits available for purchase for the Iris shoulder bag. So we've got that available in 6 different finishes for you. We've put everything together so that we made it very easy for you and you don't have to think about the hardware that you're going to need. So talking about hardware, if you are doing a bag tag, you'll need your bag tag. I'm going to be using my custom bag tag. However, the hardware kit does include a handmade bag tag. Our front exterior and our back exterior panels are here. That is pattern piece A. You're going to need A1, which is your stabilizer. Now that's going to vary depending on if you're doing the quilted version like I am. And for the quilted version, you are going to need a piece of foam stabilizer. So I've got my foam right here. This is going to give me that nice plush quilted look when I do my quilting on the front exterior. Another tip for you is if you have a serger or if you have a machine that does a zigzag stitch, you can come around the edges of your stabilizer piece right here and compress those. That way it graduates a little bit from thicker to thinner. I like the look of it better. I actually did it on my piece, but I have my serger at home now, and I left it at home, forgot to bring it today for filming. So when I film the exterior of this bag later on, I'll show you what that looks like with the serged edges on it. That's just a little tip. I always like to serge my edges when I'm using foam. If you are not doing the foam, or excuse me, if you're not doing the quilted version, then you're going to just want to use 2 pieces of Decaville Light. I know there is a shortage of Decaville Light right now. We might have some black left in stock, but don't worry, we are getting a shipment of Decaville Light that is 36 inches wide by 1 yard or however many yards you need. And we are hoping to have that probably within a week and a half to 2 weeks of filming this video right now. So that way you guys can get your Decaville Light and stock up. So for your Decaville Light, on your front exterior, you do not have to cut out this hole. Only do that for the back exterior. This is going to keep that stabilizer away whenever you're doing your zipper overlay right here on the back exterior. So that is what it looks like. And whenever you are putting your stabilizer down, you're going to measure in a half of an inch up from the bottom side and a half of an inch in from the left or the right side like I've done here. So this is already ready for whenever I am going to show you later how to put your stabilizer in place. That'll make it nice and perfectly centered. Moving on to the pieces for our lining. Here I have pattern piece C. This is our lining top. You need 2 of those. We have our zipper panel right here, which is pattern piece E. I have 2 of the exterior and 2 of the lining. For your zipper panel pieces, make sure that you draw a line in 1 inch from one of the short raw edges, like I've done on all pieces here, and I applied some double-sided tape along the outside edge. You will need your zipper, which is going to be number 5 zipper, 13 inches long, and a number 5 zipper pull as well. And optional, you will need a zipper end hardware piece like I have right here, or if you're skipping that, then you will need pattern piece J, which is our zipper tab right here. So that is what it's going to look like. You'll divide this down the center along the short side. Here we have our lining bottom piece, which is pattern piece D. You're going to need 2 of those. Next up is our pockets. So for our pockets, we have pattern piece F. You are going to need 3 of those. That's going to give you 2 zipper pocket linings and 1 slip pocket. Then you will need your zipper overlay, which does need to be a non-fraying fabric. So you'll need 2 of those, 1 for the back exterior and 1 for your lining pocket. I've already prepped this out by adding some double-sided tape along the back side. I recommend the 1/8 of an inch, which we carry now on our website. You are also going to need 2 number 3 or 2 number 5 zipper tapes and zipper pulls. I've already installed those right there. Then you'll need pattern piece G, which is your slip pocket trim. That also needs to be a non-fraying fabric. I have gone ahead and drawn a line down the length in the center here of the slip pocket trim and added some double-sided tape along both sides of the line drawn. Your pattern does include these little tabs to keep everything organized, so I do recommend using those. To help you piece together your pattern pieces, I recommend referring to your pattern map, which is included in the pattern. All of the pattern pieces are color-coded, so you just match up those colors and then match up the letters in the center that are inside the boxes, and that'll help you to figure out what needs to be pieced together. Here I have my pattern piece B, which is my exterior gusset, as well as B1, which is my gusset stabilizer. So I've already centered that by doing half of an inch up from one side, half of an inch in from the other side, and making sure that that's centered. So that's my Decaville Light on there. If you are doing the piping, then you'll need 2 pieces of piping. Refer to the cutting guide in the pattern for the length and the width that you need to cut your piping fabric. So here's our piping fabric. I drew a line down the length in the center here of each piece of my piping fabric, and I applied some double-sided tape along the center line that was drawn. We want to keep the double-sided tape about a half of an inch away from both short raw edges right here. Next up, you will need pattern piece I. This is your strap connectors. You're going to need 2 of those. Draw a line down the center length of each piece. Apply some double-sided tape along both lines drawn. Now, I mentioned earlier in the pattern piece review section that you needed 2 strap connector pieces. That is incorrect, so let's just get rid of one of those, and we will be working with one. And for the hidden connectors, you will need pattern piece I1. You're going to need 2 of those. If you're not doing the hidden connectors, you can skip this step, and you can add your strap connectors however you want. But I'll show you the way that we do it in the pattern. Here's what the hidden strap connectors look like that we are doing in the video and that are in the written instructions. However, if you would like to use some sort of strap anchor, you can do that. Angie did that on her bag. She used our diamond strap anchors that are 3/4 of an inch wide. Therefore, she used a 3/4 of an inch wide strap. We do have some of these left, but we are going to be discontinuing these, so the quantities are limited. But the hidden connector, or excuse me, the diamond strap connectors look gorgeous on this bag. The last piece that we have is our shoulder strap. You are going to need one exterior, and the length of your shoulder strap is going to vary depending on how tall you are, if you want a shoulder strap that's adjustable or not, if you want a crossbody strap. So anywhere from about 33 inches up to about 55 or 60 inches in length. That's going to be up to you. Mine is roughly 36 inches. I'm shorter, so I'm going with the shorter length. I've drawn a line down the center length, added some double-sided tape along both sides of the line drawn for my strap. And then for your shoulder strap, you will need 2 rectangle rings if you are going with the style that we do in the pattern. So here is the rectangle rings. If you've chosen to do snap hooks and D-rings, then you'll need those. Also, the adjustable strap slider, that's going to be up to you if you want to make your strap adjustable or not. I've included the strap slider in the hardware kits as well as in the pattern when I'm making the bag. You're also going to need rivets. The amount of rivets is going to vary depending on how much you want to add to your bag. At minimum, you'll need a rivet beneath your strap connectors right here. So that's 2 rivets there. 2 rivets on this side of your strap, 1 to 2 here. So that is 2, 4, 5, so 6 rivets at minimum. Now the hardware kit's going to include 10 rivets. So you'll get some additional rivets. Sometimes people like to add rivets along the top edges here of your slip pocket trim. So that's another place. Other people like to add some rivets along both sides here of the zipper overlay. For those of you who are going to quilt the front exterior of your Irish shoulder bag, you'll need to do that with one of 2 methods. First method is using printer paper. So you would print out the quilting template number 1 and cut them into individual arcs like I've done right here that are going to range from A through G. So I've got them laid out. Or, this is my preferred method, you can use tear away stabilizer. If you've done any type of embroidery, then you're familiar with tearaway stabilizer. I personally was not. This method was recommended to me by one of our employees, Angie, because she does do embroidery. So she suggested that we use the tearaway stabilizer, and we can insert that into our printer to print directly onto it, and then we can use this as a guide to do our quilting. I'll show you further on in the video on how we are going to do this. I like this method as it's less chance for error versus drawing on the individual lines from these arcs right here. So we do sell the tearaway stabilizer on our website now if you need to get some. And all you do is you're going to cut 2 pieces the size of your printer paper. So here in the US, that's going to be 8.5 inches by 11 inches. Insert that into your printer and print off template number 2, the left side and the right side. Tape those together, cut that out, and this is what you'll be left with. Now, another way that you can do the paper version on Quilting Template 1 was suggested by one of our pattern testers. I knew that when I sent this over to testing, we were going to get someone that had a better way of doing it than each of these individual arcs. So thank you so much, Twyla, for this suggestion. I wanted to share with everybody what you did. So she added some packing tape to the front side of the printed off template number 1. So I've done that here. This is just going to keep it intact and less chance for it to tear whenever you're working with it. Now I've noticed I didn't cut all the way here, so let me cut the rest of this template. So you're going to want to cut each of the individual arcs up to this point right here and leave the remaining paper in place. So that's going to leave this fan right here. So choose whichever method that you want, the individual arcs, doing it like this, or what I like to do, and we'll do in the video today, using the tearaway stabilizer. But we'll go over all of these methods as well. Let's start by sewing up our shoulder strap or our crossbody strap, whichever one you're doing. We've already gone over the prep work that we needed to do. So what I've done is I've removed the double-sided tape and folded in the long raw edge to meet the line drawn in the center. I'm going to repeat that for the opposite side. Once you've folded those long raw edges to meet the center line, fold it in half once more, clip this into place, and take this over to your sewing machine and sew down the open side first at 1/8 of an inch and the opposite side at 1/8 of an inch. Alternatively, you can also do 1/4 of an inch top stitching if you'd like. Once you have finished top stitching your strap, you can set that aside. Let's work on our front exterior. If you are doing the non-quilted version, then all you need to do is install your bag tag if you're using one, and you can use pattern piece A for your placement. I've got 2 recommended placement markings. If you're doing the non-quilted version, I personally like placement number 2, but you can go with placement number 1 or whichever placement that you want to do. What I like to do is just fold my pattern piece in half, line up the edges right here, use my air erasable pen to mark a dot where I want my placement to be, and then I'll install my bag tag per manufacturer's instructions. If you are doing the quilted version, hold off. We'll do this later after we've done our quilting. Now we're going to quilt our front exterior panel. So I've got this right side up on top of my workstation, and I have my pattern piece A. I also have my quilting templates. So like we reviewed earlier, you can either cut out your arcs individually like I have on my left side, or here on the right side like Twyla did. You can keep your arcs intact by not cutting along this side. So either method works fine. So this is going to be quilting template number 1, so the very first technique. As I said earlier, I'm not doing this technique, but we'll do a rundown today, so that way you can see it. I'll be doing technique number 2. So what you want to do is add some double-sided tape along the center back of your front exterior panel. Also make sure that you have your 1/2 inch lines drawn. We'll add our interfacing, or I should say foam stabilizer, after we've drawn our lines on the front exterior. So earlier I mentioned that I didn't have my serged version to show you because I left it at home, but I have it now. So you can either have your foam stabilizer here without the serged edges, which is perfectly fine, or you can use a serger to compress the edges or a zigzag stitch to compress the edges. It just creates a smoother transition from the bulk of the foam down over to your fabric. So either one's perfectly acceptable. You could also add some additional double-sided tape if you'd like. I would recommend keeping it away from these areas right here where you're going to sew your quilting stitching, because you don't want to sew through that tape if you don't need to. That way you don't gum up your needle. I think that the one down the center is perfectly sufficient to keep everything in place while you're quilting. Okay, so let's start with the first step. So what you'll want to do is cut these little notches along each of the arcs on the left side and on the bottom, like I've already done right here, so you can see. This is just going to allow me to fold these up a little bit and make my markings. So take the template or the paper piece here and clip it into place, making sure that everything is lined up evenly. And we're going to work with one side at a time. Make sure when you start to draw your quilting lines that you grab your air erasable pen. I'm using my Sew Line pen, which is available on our website. I like this pen the absolute best for drawing my quilting lines because I know that it's going to air erase on its own. And with some fabrics and textures, it may not completely air erase, but with a damp cloth, it's going to wipe away no problem. So make sure that you grab some test fabric and ensure that the line is going to disappear on its own, or that you can wipe it away and you won't have any residual there, because we don't want to be able to see that after we're done with our quilting. Another thing is to grab some test fabric and test out your top stitching to see which color thread that you want. On the left here, we've got a lighter blue, and on the right, a darker blue. I've chosen to go with the darker blue because I think that it complements the piping that I am going to be using, which is our steel blue milled grain faux leather. Now let's transfer the arc markings here on the left and the bottom side by flipping back the arc A piece right here and just drawing along the both sides right here that is open. Then you're going to skip and go into C. Then you'll do E. And then lastly G. Repeat the same process for the bottom side. Once you've done that, remove your pattern piece, and you can see here we are left with the little tick marks to let us know where we need to place our arcs. So grab your first arc, which is arc A, and grab a quilting clip or a vinyl clip like I have right here, and line this up with the first set of lines. From here, you're going to take your pen, hold down the center of the arc, and you're going to trace along both sides of the arc. I'm not going to do this since I'm not doing this version, but that's what you're going to do. You're going to have 2 lines drawn. Remove A and place B down on the second mark. Then continue to repeat this process for all remaining arcs. If you'd like to use this version, then all you have to do is line up the top edge right here. And then you're going to clip it in place, line up the bottom edge, and then one by one you will line up the bottom edge of each arc. Then you can flip these out of the way and then draw your lines. So each way is perfectly fine, whatever one you prefer doing. Once you've drawn your lines on the left, you are going to take your paper template right here, flip it over, and repeat the same process for the right side. And then take each of your arcs, flip them over, and repeat for the opposite side. Then what you want to do is you are going to remove the paper backing from your double-sided tape and place your foam stabilizer, making sure that you line it up with the left line drawn and the bottom line drawn so that it is nice and centered. And then you'll take this over to your sewing machine and you will sew along the lines that you drew. I personally like to start sewing from the bottom center, so I put it underneath my machine just like this, and I will follow along with the lines that I drew. And go slowly to sew your quilting stitching so that way you stay on track. Backstitch at the front and the bottom, just 1 or 2 stitches, so that way everything stays into place. You don't need to really worry about your backstitching showing because that's still going to be within your seam allowance. And then just continue doing all your arcs on one side. Then continue to do your arcs on the opposite side. Now let's go over the quilting template number 2 method, which is the one we'll be using today. You'll need to print out these pattern pieces, so your template 2, left and right side, on your tearaway stabilizer and tape those together down the center like I've done right here. You will need to have your double-sided tape going along the center here like I just reviewed in the first method. Remove the paper backing from the double-sided tape. Place down your foam stabilizer. Then you are going to take your quilting template and place it on top. So you're going to sandwich the stabilizer in between. So here is the right side of the fabric. And then here's our template. We want to be able to see the lines when we're sewing them. So line everything up. Now take this over to your sewing machine and we want to base stitch this into place. I like to only base stitch along the areas that have the arcs right here. So I'm going to base stitch along this side, the bottom, the whole entire bottom right here, and then over this side. I want to leave the top open and I want to leave these corners open because I'm going to cut away or tear away the stabilizer later on from all of these areas. All right, these sides and the bottom are base stitched into place, so you can see here that we have everything open on the top, my corners, and here is what it looks like from this side. So we're just base stitching it about 1/8 of an inch away from the outside edge. Now that's going to hold in place while we begin to do our quilting stitching. So we are going to quilt this from the wrong side. So we're going to put this underneath our sewing machine, and just like I instructed on the technique number 1, begin to sew along the center bottom, sewing along this line right here, making sure that you start, you backstitch when you start and when you stop as well, and continue to go and do each of these arcs. So I'm going to do that now, and I'll bring you over to the sewing machine so you can see in real time as I do one of the arcs. I've got my stitch length set to 5 millimeters. That's going to vary depending on your sewing machine, but I like a bigger top stitching. Now I'm going to slowly start to follow along the first arc. So here is what it looks like. I did a really good job. I got off track just a hair, but you're never going to be able to tell that. So let's look at the opposite side. And here is my quilting on the front side. So I'm just going to continue to do all of my arcs on the right side, and then I'll do all of my arcs on the left side. Okay, there is my quilted front exterior panel, as you can see right here. I'm going to come in and clean up these edges right here, trim away all of these threads and get rid of the bunching right here. So I'll do that in just a moment. Oh, now we want to get rid of all the excess of the tearaway stabilizer. Now I am using a medium weight tearaway stabilizer, which we sell on our website. That is the only weight that I could get from my supplier. So that's what we have available. There are lightweight tearaway stabilizers available, which should allow you to easily tear away the stabilizer from your stitching. Because I'm using a medium weight tearaway stabilizer, I don't want to chance pulling any of my stitching, so I'm not going to tear it away, but if you have a lightweight, go right ahead. All I'm going to do is come in with my scissors and cut away really close to the stitching along the corners here. Make sure you're using a nice sharp pair of scissors. You can also use embroidery scissors. I could even use these little guys right here. So I've got the corners trimmed away. Now let's repeat that for this portion right here. And here's what you're left with. You've got your tearaway stabilizer still within the arcs on both sides. You can get all finicky if you want, and especially if you have the lightweight tearaway stabilizer, you can sit here and just peel that away. It'll tear right away. You can use some embroidery scissors or small scissors to cut it away, but honestly, you don't need to remove it. It's not crunchy. Whenever you leave it in the bag, it actually gives a little bit more stability. Let me grab my other bag where I left the tearaway stabilizer in. So here is my Irish shoulder bag, and it's not crunchy. You can't even tell that it's in there. It gives it just a little bit more stability. So there's no need to trim away all of the little bits and pieces here. You can leave it just as I have. So like I said, I am going to trim up all of my little threads and make this a little bit more presentable. And then I'm going to install my bag tag next. So grab your handmade bag tag, your custom bag tag, whichever one you have. I'll be doing my custom one. And grab pattern piece A, which I have right here. And for this particular one, you want to go with your placement number 1. Now, if your bag tag is a different size, you can raise that or lower it if you'd like. So we'll take the pattern piece, fold it into half, grab your air erasable pen, and line everything up here. And just to make a little marking with your pen to find your center and exactly where you need to place that. Then install your bag tag however you need to based upon the type of bag tag that you have. I'm going to grab my washer and install mine. If you need to sew yours on, do that now. Okay, there you have my bag tag. Now we are going to make our piping. So if you are skipping the piped version, then you can skip this part of the video. For our piping, you need both of your piping pieces with your double-sided tape down the center, like I have right here. Also grab your welt cord, or if you're using cotton piping cording, grab those as well. So we have those. And I highly recommend using a piping foot on your sewing machine. It makes the world of difference for sewing your piping, making the piping and then sewing it onto your bag as well. This is a kit of piping feet that I got on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description box below. This works for my sewing machine, which is the Juki TL18 QVP. It also works on some Singer models and Brother models as well. So check out that link in the description box if you want to get yourself a set of piping feet. The feet work for all different size pipings. So for me, I'm using the largest one that's in the kit, and that one measures 3/16 of an inch, and our piping is 3/32 of an inch. I'll be putting that on my sewing machine momentarily. Remove the paper backing from your double-sided tape and place your piping right on top of it. Repeat this for both pieces of your piping fabric. Next, grab some quilting clips or vinyl clips. Fold your piping in half and just clip along the entire length of the piping to keep everything in place. I've got both of my piping fabric and my piping clipped here. So let's go over to the sewing machine so I can show you how I sew my piping. In the beginning here, we don't have any piping, and your piping foot is probably not going to feed the fabric through. So I need to start off with a regular presser foot. I happen to have my Teflon foot on right now. So I'm just going to begin sewing at 3/8 of an inch. Make sure that you're using a thread color that matches your piping. And then once I get to where the piping starts, I'm going to switch out my foot. If you do not have a piping foot, you can use a zipper foot or a narrow presser foot, like an 1/8 of an inch presser foot. But the piping foot makes it so much easier, so I highly recommend you get yourself one. All right, my piping foot is now on, so I am going to set the plastic welt cord piping in the groove of the presser foot. And that is going to result in the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And all we have to do now is sew down the length of the fabric, making sure that we keep the raw edges matched up. As you reach the end here without the piping, you can switch back over to your standard foot. I'm going to see if this is going to feed through at the end. Okay, I had no problem there. Now repeat this process for the remaining piece of piping fabric and piping. Okay, there is my piping all made and ready to go. So I've got that there. What I want to do now is I want to find the center of my piping by folding it in half right here. And I'm going to clip a little notch within the seam allowance, so just on the edge right here. Do that for both pieces. So now I can clearly see where my center is. You also want to find the top and bottom centers of your front exterior panel if you haven't already done that, and clip little notches, which I have done here. You are going to want to mark 1 inch down from both top sides. So use your air erasable pen to mark 1 inch down. This is where we are going to taper off our piping when we are sewing it on. Grab your piping, find the center of your piping and the bottom center of your front exterior panel. Clip that into place with some quilting clips and go from one side to the other. That way you are evenly clipping everything into place. Once I get to my corners, I am going to need to cut about 10 to 12 notches, about 1/8 of an inch away apart, to ease that piping around my corners. So I'm going to grab my scissors and just start cutting notches. And let me take a look and see if I need to do more. I'm going to do one more notch. So let me show you what that looks like. So you can see right here, we've got all of the little snips in there. We'll do the same thing for the opposite side. And we're going to continue to clip this into place. Now that this is clipped into place, you'll want to grab your stapler. This is going to be your best friend on this bag because it's going to make everything much easier, keeping your piping in place and later on keeping your gusset into place. So what I like to do is I like to remove the clips that are just to the left and the right of the bottom center. So one at a time, I'll remove a clip and add a staple in its place. When you add the staple, you want to keep it as close to the outside edge as possible. So there is what it looks like here from the back. You know, you can't see it as much, but it's right there along the edge. And the closer that I keep it to the edge, the better, because later on when I trim down my seam allowance, I can just cut that staple out, or you can use a staple remover if you want. You can also do that as well. So let me get the next one put into place. From here, I like to add a staple just beneath the 1-inch mark right here. So I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to move this clip down, and my 1-inch mark is right here. So I'm just going to go below that. So let me show you what that looks like. So there's the 1-inch marking. So just a little bit below, about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch below. Do that for the other side as well. And now the most important areas are going to be right around the curves right here. So I am going to put a staple just around where here's where it is the most curviest. I'm going to put one on the left and the right of that curve. And then I will do right here in the middle of the curve. Hopefully you can see those staples. I'm going to move it here so maybe the light will catch it. So we've got 1, 2, and 3. Do that for the opposite side. Now I'm going to add a staple about halfway between the first staple here and this one here. And then I'm just going to place my clips in between those. I don't think it's necessary along the straight edges to worry about stapling the whole way around. So I just add some clips there. But if you want, be my guest and add as many staples as you want. And let's do the same thing for the opposite side because I like to keep everything balanced as I'm working. Okay, everything is now clipped into place or stapled into place. Now I want to focus on tapering off my piping. So if I take the piping and I pull it off to the side, I can see my 1-inch mark right here. I've got a little bit of bulk within the piping, and I want to cut a little notch in there. So a little triangle out to remove that bulk right there where that fold is. So I'm going to grab my scissors and cut within the seam allowance a little triangle here. And that's just going to get rid of that bulk that we don't need. And it makes it a little bit smoother. Now grab your quilting clip and clip that into place right there. And do the same thing for the opposite side. Now I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine with my piping foot and sew this on. And it's going to be a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm going to begin sewing just before the piping. So I'm going to put my needle down right here where my nail is. And have that piping pulled off to the side. When you begin to go around your corners right here, you want to go really slow. So basically just 1 stitch at a time. And then I can increase my speed as I come back to the straight edge. All right, my piping is now secured into place. So you can fold that back and check your work, especially around your corners, to make sure that it looks really well. So I'm just going along the length right here. And everything looks fantastic. So I'm going to trim off these little ears right here. I like to do that from the wrong side, just makes it easier to see what I should trim. Okay, the front exterior is now complete. Repeat the same process to attach your piping to your back exterior. Here I have my back exterior panel A, as well as one of my zipper overlays, which is H. I've got the double-sided tape on the back, and I want to measure down 1¼ inches from the top center of my back exterior panel. I'll remove the double-sided tape and place down my zipper overlay. Instead of using your quilting ruler, you can also use the placement markings here on the pattern piece A by folding that in half. And just like we did with our bag tag, fold it in half and make your little marks. I prefer the quilting ruler, but that is there if you'd like to use it. Once you have your zipper overlay in place and secured with the double-sided tape, you're going to take this over to your sewing machine and you are going to sew along the outside edge at 1/8 of an inch. Leave your thread tails long because we're going to tie those off at the end. That way we don't see the back stitching. So do not back stitch. The outside of the overlay is now sewn into place, and you can see here that my thread tails are long. I need to pull these to the back side. So I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to tug on one of the bobbin tails right here, and that is going to create a little loop, which you might be able to see on camera. I'm going to use the stiletto right here to grab a hold of that loop and pull the thread to the back. From here, I'm going to tie off those 2 threads. And I'm going to tie it in a knot twice, nice and tight. Repeat the same thing for the other thread, pulling it to the back. Now I'm going to cut off the excess. And I'd like to also add a little bit of duct tape just to secure that down. All right, next we need to cut a hole in the center here of our overlay window without cutting the overlay itself. Usually I would use my rotary cutter, but my cutting mat is right here flipped upside down, so I don't want to cut into that. So I'm just going to use my scissors to cut that. Turn this over and trim away the excess behind the zipper overlay. As I always say, it does not have to look pretty. We just don't want to see it when we flip this over. Okay, and there you can see the window is nice and clean and crisp. So we can put this aside for the moment. Next, we are going to sew up both our back exterior zipper pocket lining and our lining zipper pocket lining. So that's pattern piece F, as well as my 2 zippers that correspond with my zipper pulls already installed. So let's work on the first one right here. We're going to grab our quilting clips and we are going to clip the zipper tape to the short edge. So I've got my fabric facing right side up and my zipper facing right side up. Do that for both your pocket linings and your zippers. Base stitch both of these with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once those have been sewn on, you are going to bring the zipper tape down to meet the opposite end and clip this into place. Repeat for the second one as well, and you're going to sew this with a base stitch of 1/8 of an inch. Once you have sewn both of your zipper pocket linings, you'll have a tube just like you can see right here. So I can see the entire right side of my zipper tape. Now we want to apply some double-sided tape along both edges of the zipper tape. Once your double-sided tape has been placed on both sides of the zipper tape, I'm just going to place my lining one to the side for whenever I install this into my lining later. Let's just work for now with the back exterior. So remove the paper backing from the top edge of the zipper tape. So the top edge is going to be determined for right-handed people, or just a standard ergonomic way is when the zipper pull is closed, it's going to be to the left. So this is the correct way to do it. Now, if you are making this for yourself and you're left-handed, or for anybody else who is left-handed, then you would want to flip this over so that the zipper pull is to the right when closed. While I am left-handed, I will be making this one probably as the display that will be displayed in our Donnell in Florida store. So I want to make it the standard ergonomic way. So I've got my pocket right here. I am going to place this right on top of my zipper, centering the zipper tape in the window. Then I'm going to grab my zipper pull and pull that through. And let me take a look. I'm happy with the placement. So now I'm going to flip this up and remove the paper backing from the double-sided tape and secure that into place. Now we need to sew the zipper into place. In order to do that, flip this over and flip your pocket lining to the up position. From here, take this over to your sewing machine and you are going to sew along the edge here, which is the bottom edge of the overlay, at 1/8 of an inch. Leave your thread tails long, tie them off at the back. My bottom edge is sewn and my machine happened to skip a stitch right here. So I wanted to show you a little tip on how to make it look like you do not have a skipped stitch. What I've done is I've grabbed my thread and added it to a hand sewing needle. I am going to go from the back side where that skip stitch is up through the hole that the machine created with the sewing machine needle. And it's going to take me just a moment to find that hole. I'm trying not to create any new holes in my vinyl. Okay, so I've gone up through that hole and I'm going to go back down over the thread of that skip stitch through the same hole. Now all I have to do is tie this off a couple of times. And let's see how that skip stitch looks now. See, I almost can't even tell. So that is the way to repair a skip stitch. Since there was only one right there, I didn't want to have to remake my zipper overlay. And I also didn't want to undo the stitches and restitch it. So just a little tip for you. So we've got the bottom side sewn. Now we need to sew our top side. So with the pocket in the down position, we will take this over to our sewing machine and we are going to sew along this short edge right here. So we're going to put our needle down where our stitches ended on this this row right here. Sew along the short edge with the needle down. We're going to pivot, come along this edge at 1/8 of an inch with the needle down, pivot, and finish off where we started our stitching right here. We have completed sewing along the inner portion of the zipper overlay window. Now we need to close up our pocket by flipping the back exterior off to the side right here and sewing down this edge at about 1/4 of an inch. Then you are going to come in and do the opposite side as well, the same way at 1/4 of an inch. Our zipper pocket is now complete. I trimmed down the excess off the sides so we can set this aside. You're going to repeat the same steps to sew the remaining zipper overlay to the lining bottom piece, which is pattern piece D, placing it 7/8 of an inch down from the top center. You'll also have your recently constructed zipper pocket lining piece right here with your zipper. So get that constructed. The one thing that you do not want to do is you don't want to sew down the sides of the pocket until I instruct you to do so. So do not do this step yet. Okay, my pocket is now constructed, leaving the sides open. So as you can see here, we still have our sides open. You want to come in now with your scissors while your pocket is laying flat and cut it open. I'm going to have to hang it off my table just a little bit to do that. So now my pocket is in two. I want to grab my quilting ruler and I am going to measure up 3/4 of an inch from the bottom cut edge. And use a pen or an air erasable pen, either one will work. And draw your line. And let's hold this and flip it and do the same thing for the other side. The reason that we are opening up our pocket is this is where we are going to close up the hole in our lining later on in the final construction step. Grab your double-sided tape and you are going to apply a strip just beneath the line that you just drew. And this is going to hold everything into place while we finish making the bag. Do that for both sides. Now remove the paper backing and fold up the edge to meet the line that you drew. Doing that for both sides. And when I'm doing this side, I'm really trying to focus on just getting it to meet up and be the same. So it may not come up to the line exactly. Give that a good press, just like that. And now we will close up the sides of our pocket, just like we did on the back exterior by flipping this out of the way and sewing down the sides. Okay, this is what your pocket should look like. So it is open there at the bottom. Our sides are closed up. So we can set this aside. Let's work on the remaining lining panel, which is the lining bottom piece D. I have my last pattern piece F, which is my slip pocket piece right here. And I also have pattern piece G, which is my slip pocket trim. I'm going to work first with the remaining slip pocket piece right here. We are going to match up the short raw edges. Clip the sides if you wish, and sew down each side with 1/4 inch. Leave the top open. Here is what my pocket looks like sewn. I'm going to trim down the seam allowances on both sides to about 1/8 inch. I also like to make sure that I nip off that little corner right there. It'll just reduce the bulk when we turn this right side out in a moment. Turn your pocket right side out. Make sure you poke out your corners. You can press this with an iron if you're using cotton. However, since I'm using the liner text, I'm not going to press it. I'm just going to finger press. I could use a Teflon sheet on top of this to press it if I wanted to. I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine and base stitch this top edge closed with 1/8 inch. After you've base stitched the top close, grab your slip pocket trim, remove the paper backing from the bottom side of where the line was drawn, which I've already done, and line up the top edge of your slip pocket with the line drawn. You may have a little bit extra, so you can trim that down now or after you've sewn it on. It's up to you. And then remove the paper backing from the other side. Fold over to bind the edge. And I also like to use some clips. Okay, take this over to your sewing machine and sew along the raw edge here at 1/8 inch. Check to see that you caught the back on that. If you didn't, you can go ahead and add a second row of stitching at 1/8 inch away from the first row of stitching that you did. Okay, my slip pocket is complete. I'm going to place this down 7/8 inch from the top center. Take this over to your sewing machine, sew down the left, bottom, and right side at 1/8 inch, and divide your pocket down the center or wherever you would like. Okay, my slip pocket's now sewn in place. Let's recap what we've done so far. We have our front exterior quilted and with the piping on. Our back exterior with the zipper pocket and the piping on. You should have one lining bottom panel D with the zipper pocket installed on it, and one with the slip pocket installed on it. Now we're going to work on our hidden strap connectors. If you've chosen to do strap anchor hardware like Angie did on the side of her gusset, then you can skip these steps right here in the video. The first thing that you want to do with your strap connector eyepiece is remove the double-sided tape, or I should say the paper backing from the double-sided tape, and fold in the long raw edges to meet that center line drawn. Do that for both sides. Once you have folded in those raw edges, take this over to your sewing machine and top stitch along the left and the right side at 1/8 inch. After you have top stitched, just fold your strap connector in half and cut it down the center to create 2 connectors. Now let's mark our placement for our hidden strap connector on our gusset piece. In order to do that, I like to fold back the pattern piece where it says hidden strap connector placement right on that line that's there in the center. I'll still be able to see the line when I'm looking at it from the side right here. I'm going to take this and I'm going to lay it on top of my fabric. The fabric's right side up. I'm going to match up the paper piece with the fabric along the edges. And just put some clips on there so that it doesn't move on me as I'm working. Okay, from here we are left with where we want to use our air erasable pen to make the marking for the hidden connector placement. So I can see it from this angle. So I'm just going to go along and transfer that line over right there. Now I wanted to point out that this line is a little bit shorter or shy of 1 inch. I did that purposely because I don't want you to overcut this line. We can always cut this a little bit larger if our strap connectors and our hidden connector facing doesn't fit through the hole. Okay, I have my X-Acto knife. I'm ready to cut the hole right there for my hidden connector. So I'm just double checking my work before I make that cut, and it is centered. So I'm just going to flip this back and carefully cut with my X-Acto knife right along this line. You're going to do this for both sides. Now grab one of your hidden connector facing I1 pieces, which I have right here. We are going to insert that into the hole wrong side up, and our fabric is right side up, just like this. Now I can already see that the hole's not large enough, so I'm going to go back in and carefully extend the length of the hole, but we can always double check before we do that by trying to put that in. It is a little bit too short, and like I said, I did that purposely because I don't want you to accidentally overcut. So I'm just going to extend that on both sides just a little bit. So pull the hidden connector facing to the back and have it exposed about 1/4 of an inch here from the back side, like I have. I'll repeat this for the opposite side. All right, I wanted to give credit to Amy Lynn Designs for coming up with this hidden connector method. Kelly Rayo of the Creative Bag Making Group had let me know that Amy Lynn came up with this technique, which she said was better than hers, which I even loved Kelly Rayo's technique. So when I checked it out, I had to agree that this is the best and the easiest method for installing hidden connectors to your gusset. So shout out to Amy Lynn. I put a link to her video in the sewing pattern, so you guys can check that out and give her YouTube channel some support. The next step that we want to do is we are going to sew down our hidden connector facing to our gusset. And we want to make sure that we are using a thread for this whole entire process that matches our gusset fabric, because you might experience a little bit of the threads showing through whenever you're finished with sewing the hidden connectors into place. So switch out that thread now. You're going to back stitch when you start and you stop, sewing very closely to the cut fabric right here on the gusset. But we want to keep the stitches only on the hidden connector facing. So I'm going to come in and sew right along this edge. Okay, I have sewn that into place, so you should be able to see that there on camera. I've repeated that for both sides. So here is what it looks like from that angle and from the back side. We want to pull this through the hole that we cut. So we're gonna just fold that little corner down in there and grab the corner and pull it back through to create the facing. So this is gonna leave a nice crisp, clean edge right here. That's what yours should look like. So do that for both sides. And now it's time for us to insert our strap connector. So grab one of your strap connectors. You're going to insert it wrong side up from left to right in this direction. And you may have to pull the fabric pieces out of the way from the back here to help you find the hole. So this is where we're at right now. So that is the front side, and here is our back side. And we have this pulled through probably about 1/2 of an inch or so here. It can also be 1/4 of an inch. It doesn't have to be that long. So I shortened it a little bit right there. Next, you want to secure the strap connector to our gusset, and what we want to do is just like we did with the facing, but on this side of the opening, we are going to backstitch when we start and stop, sewing really closely to that opening at 1/8 of an inch or so away. So let me get that sewn. I find that it's easiest to switch over to my narrow presser foot, which is about 1/8 of an inch here wide. You can also switch over to a zipper foot. It is a little bit easier because it kind of avoids the bulk that we have here on the sewn edges. So there is my stitching. I used about a 3mm stitch length for this. And when I flip this up, this is what this side's going to look like. So it's a nice clean finish. And this is the area where I was stating that it's important to have a thread that matches your gusset, because you might see a little bit of stitches pulling right there. Depends on the fabrics that you're using. So that is what mine looks like. We can grab our rectangle rings, or if you're using D-rings, then you can grab those. And I'm going to insert it. And then I'm going to take that end and put it back through the hole. And it might be hard to figure out. Just keep pushing it, and you'll figure out where the hole is here. There it is, right through the center. And I like to pull mine tight. If you wanted to have a little bit of slack, you could actually have it like this if you want, but I like to have a nice tight connector. It also helps to keep the hardware out of the way when we're doing our final top stitching. So I think that looks good right there. I'm going to do the same thing for the other end. Don't be intimidated by hidden connectors. It's really an easy and very professional finish to your bags. I personally tried it once several years ago, and it was a whole different technique, and I hated it. I wrote it off, said I'll never do it again. And then when I found Kelly Rayo's method, I said, let me give it a go. And then when I found this one, or when Kelly shared it with me, I was like, okay, I'm doing like all my bags with hidden connectors now. So look at that. Doesn't that look so professional? Now the last step is that we just need to add a rivet to connect all of these little layers here together to the gusset itself. So I'm going to grab my leather hole punch. And there is my installed rivets. Now we just need to trim away that excess from the strap connectors to reduce that bulk. Next, we're going to grab our exterior gusset and our back exterior panel and clip those into place just like we did with our piping. Replace some of those clips with staples, focusing on the top left and right, as well as your curved edges. I designed the gusset so that it should fit perfectly without the need to cut any notches within the exterior gusset at the curves. But for whatever reason, if you have a thicker fabric that you're using and you need to do that, feel free to cut the notches just like we did on the piping. When you're sewing this on, I recommend using a thread that matches your piping color. So I've got my blue thread on. You can also use a stiletto to help guide you and keep everything into place. Okay, that has been sewn on. So that's where we're at. So let's take a look at our work. So I'm going to flip this out. Everything looks absolutely perfect in my opinion. So that is what we are looking like with the blue and the yellow, and my goodness, it's adorable. I almost wish I would have used a steel blue zipper right here to pull in the color, but oh well, it is what it is, because we do have steel blue that matches our steel blue mill drain faux leathers, in case you guys want to make anything similar to this bag. So that is my back exterior. I'm going to repeat the same exact process to attach the front exterior panel to the opposite side of my gusset. So I'm going to turn this the opposite way, and I'm going to clip this into place and sew that on again with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, that is stapled and clipped into place. So let me get that sewn on with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance with my piping foot. I've sewn the gusset to the front exterior now. I turned it right side out to check my work before fully committing to cutting down my seam allowances. So I'm going to turn this back wrong side out and trim down the seam allowances to about 1/4 of an inch, trimming away all of those staples as well. Okay, you can set your exterior aside. Now we're going to build our zipper panel, so make sure you have your exterior and your lining zipper panel pieces, your zipper tab or your zipper end hardware. You'll need your 13-inch zipper with your zipper pull installed. And I've already done some prep work on one side here. Let me show you what I did. Take that inner corner where the zipper tape coil is, and you're going to fold that over to the outside corner to create a triangle. Then you're going to take that and fold it back on itself. Take this over to your sewing machine, lay it flat down, and use your stiletto to hold everything in place, and then just sew a few stitches to tack that down on the outside corner. And here is what it looks like. You want to make sure that it's even on both sides. We're going to attach our zipper tab here if you're using that by placing the raw end of the zipper tape at that line that you drew. Fold this over and sew a box around the outside corners. If you're using zipper end hardware, you're going to fold the corner to meet the center. Do that for both sides. And then we're going to fold that in once more. Now we'll be able to insert the end of the zipper end over top of the zipper tape teeth right there, and then we'll use our bag hardware screwdriver, which we have available on our website if you need it. It's a handy tool to install all of your bag hardware, and once we get that screwed in, our zipper will be ready to go. I did a little prep work to my exterior and lining zipper panels. I joined the two pieces together, right sides together, and sewed down the left-hand side at 1/4 inch, which is the side opposite from where the double-sided tape is. Now fold up one side of the exterior zipper panel pieces to meet that line drawn, removing the paper backing from the double-sided tape. Then we're going to take our zipper and we are going to unzip that, insert it in between the exterior and the lining pieces, matching up the raw edges. Matching up right sides of the zipper tape with right side of the exterior zipper panel. Clip in place, and then you're going to begin sewing at 1/4 inch. When you approach about an inch away from that line that you drew on the lining side, you are going to have your needle down, and then you are going to fold up that lining portion of the zipper panel to meet the exterior portion that's underneath to make sure that they're both lined up evenly. And here it is sewn, and you can see that my edges match up nicely. And you can see where the folded edge did not meet the line that was drawn because there is stretching that occurs whenever you're sewing. We want to trim down our seam allowances and trim that corner off. And over here, we do not want to cut into the zipper tape, so move the fabric out of the way and just trim that bulk there from that outside edge. Turn right side out, making sure that you press out your corners. Then clip everything into place so it lays nice and flat. You'll come around and top stitch at 1/8 inch around all 4 sides. Once you have top stitched, you're going to repeat this process to attach the remaining zipper panel exterior and lining pieces to the opposite side of the zipper tape. Here is what your zipper panel should look like once it's all sewn together. We want to fold this in half and find our centers by clipping little notches on both sides. I've got my lining top and my lining bottom with the slip pocket installed. I've got my zipper panel. I'm going to place this right side up, matching the right sides of the lining together. Clip this into place, matching the centers, and sew along this edge with 1/8 inch base stitch. Once that's base stitched into place, you're going to take your lining top piece, place that right sides together, clip this into place, and making sure that it's centered, and sew along this edge with the 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, once you've sewn that, you are going to flip everything up, and you are going to top stitch along this edge at 1/8 inch. You may need to use your zipper foot to get by the slip pocket right here, so feel free to do that. And your seam allowance is going to be in the down position. Okay, that edge is now top stitched. You're going to grab your remaining lining bottom panel with the zipper pocket installed, and you are going to match up the top center of that with the center of the other side of your zipper panel right here. Clip this into place and base stitch this with 1/8 inch. You grab your remaining lining top piece. This is what your bag should look like at this point. And we are going to attach the lining top to the lining bottom, sandwiching the zipper panel in between, matching up our centers. So clip that into place and sew that with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, that is now sewn into place. I also went ahead and top stitched along this edge of the lining bottom piece. So this is what your bag should look like at this point. You may find due to stretching or just not lining it up perfectly that you have a little discrepancy here along the sides. All you have to do is use your scissors to taper that in. Just make sure that you're not cutting anything from this top edge. Likewise, you could use your rotary cutter. But with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, anything that is slightly off like that, it's not going to make much of a difference. It just happened on those two sides right there. Now what we're going to do is we are going to tuck our little zipper tail out of the way, and we are going to match up these side pieces where the top and the bottom come together. Clip this into place. And we're going to sew down the left and the right sides only at 3/8 of an inch. Do not sew the bottom side. After you have sewn your sides, you want to trim down your seam allowance. Turn this right side out. The reason that we're leaving the opening in the bottom completely is that this one is a little challenging to turn right side out when I had left just a small opening in the bottom and I'd already boxed my corners. So upon testing this pattern, I thought it was best to leave the bottom open completely. Grab your exterior, and here is my back exterior with my zipper pocket. I want to make sure that I'm inserting my lining inside where the zipper pocket on the lining and the zipper pocket on the back exterior are on opposite sides. So as you can see right here, once I put this in, they'll be on opposite sides. Now the reason that I do that is if you're putting stuff in your zipper pockets, it can get a little bulky. We don't want to compete with a bunch of bulk on this side and a bunch of bulk on the lining side. So we're just going to put those to balance the bag out on opposite sides. Match up your side seams right here. So I've got the side seam and then I have the little notch that I have on my exterior. Do the same thing for the opposite side. And those little seam allowances, I usually just push them off to one side. I don't think I did on this one. Let me look. Then match up our centers, making sure that we're tucking that zipper panel down and out of the way. We also want to make sure that our zipper tail is tucked down and out of the way because we don't want to sew through that. So let me see where that's at. Over here. It's down and out of the way, so we don't really need to worry about that. If your exterior panel and your gusset did not line up perfectly because it stretched as you sewed it in place, like this one here, you're not going to have to really worry about that because with the seam allowance, you're going to be able to cover that right up. All right, now that it's all clipped into place, we are going to sew along the top edge at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you have sewn your top into place, you're going to trim down your seam allowance. Now turn the bag right side out, pulling the lining out. Then I like to use my hands to kind of crease along the seams here. We'll close up the lining in just a moment. I like to do my top stitching first. So tuck everything down inside and look at your work to make sure that you don't need to make any adjustments. Roll those seams out with your fingers. Okay, now I'm going to come in with my clips to make sure that I clip this top edge so everything stays in place. I'm going to use this little crimper tool right here that you generally use with key fobs to press down the seam allowances just to reduce that bulk right there. Okay, come in and do your top stitching at either 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, whichever one you prefer. My iris shoulder bag has been top stitched. Now we need to close up the lining. So the way that we're going to do that is we are going to open up our zipper pocket in our lining. And we are going to pull out the lining there in the pocket and then pull out the bag lining through that. And it'll be a little tricky. You might have to sew this in 2 sections if your fabrics are a little bit thicker. But we are going to clip along the bottom edge right here. Okay, now we'll take this over to our sewing machine and sew along this edge right here to close up the bottom of the lining with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. After we do that, we'll come back and I'll show you how to box your corners. After I sewed my bottom, I trimmed down my seam allowance. Unfortunately, my camera wasn't recording when I was showing you this. I also boxed my corners, and the way that I did that is I matched up my side seam with my bottom seam and then clipped it into place, and then I sewed along that edge with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and trimmed down my seam allowance. I did that for both sides. Now we're going to push our lining down inside, and we can close up the pocket lining now. So we're going to clip this and sew this with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Sew along this edge with an 1/8 of an inch. After you've closed the bottom of your lining zipper pocket, push that down inside, making sure you press down those corners. Close your zipper, adjust your lining so it sits nicely inside. Close up your bag, and now it's time for us to attach our strap, whether it is a shoulder strap or a crossbody strap. I'll show you how to attach the strap to the rectangle rings. It's a little bit more challenging in comparison to just using some snap hooks and D-rings. Okay, we've got our rectangle rings right here. The bag is facing right side up. Take your strap and insert it through the right rectangle ring just like this. Grab your strap slider if you're using one, and you're going to go through the left side of the strap slider, over the center bar and down. Have that folded over about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. Next, you're going to grab the opposite end of your strap and push it through the right side, down through the left side, and then you're going to come over on the left rectangle ring, insert it from the outside going inward, fold that over, again about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, clip that into place, and that's how you install a adjustable strap slider on rectangle rings. Now you'll just come in, add strap ends if desired. It's secure with rivets here, as well as the center right here where my clip is. Okay, there is my Iris shoulder bag with the strap attached. Let me show you what she looks like on me. And here is Miss Iris all completed. She is absolutely beautiful and ready for spring. I can't wait to see your Iris shoulder bag. Please make sure to stop by our Facebook group and post photos of your completed bag. Now that I've sewn mine, it's time to sew yours.